Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to focus on clause 52 and the introduction of new section 116A, which is about the establishment and constitution of suicide and media expert panel. And I'd like to do that within the context of the makeup of the particular panel. And I did want to ask the Minister specifically about the skill set of this particular panel, because this panel is being constituted to provide advice to the Chief Coroner about applications for exemptions from the restrictions that apply to the publications of suicide in New Zealand. And the members of this committee are going to be experts in suicide prevention, expertise in the media, expertise in tikanga Māori, and expertise in Māori youth suicide. And I want to commend the establishment of this particular expert panel, but I do want to ask the question about whether expertise in terms of LGBTI issues are also valid expertise for this particular expert panel. And just a little bit of history so people know where the establishment of this expert panel came from. And so I'd like to acknowledge the previous Minister, the Honourable Chester Burrows, because it was through him that the Law Commission report number 131 was actually constructed, and that was about suicide reporting. And this phenomenon of suicide in our country is actually an issue that we all should be incredibly committed to addressing. Because if we look at the suicide statistics, this year, the 2014-15 reporting year, we had 564 deaths by suicide. The previous year, 529 deaths by suicide. 2013-14, we had 541 deaths by suicide. And I think if we look at our history of the phenomenon of suicide, the issue that this particular establishment has highlighted means that it's incumbent upon us and obviously the Coroner's Office to do as much as we can to prevent the phenomenon of suicide in our country. And so we've created this expert panel because there's been debate about whether or not the media reporting of suicide actually creates a vulnerability or exploits a vulnerability in certain members of our community so that they go on and emulate the suicide of somebody else. And so this phenomenon of copycat has really limited our ability, I believe, sometimes to talk about some of the suicides that happen in Aotearoa, New Zealand. And so if the establishment of this particular expert panel is going to enable us to have conversations, and those conversations I want to highlight from parents, for example, who have lost loved ones, who in retrospect, when they look at the behaviour of their children, signs that they didn't pick up on, and an ability, I believe, to come to a position where we can try and prevent future suicides and ensure that our young people are receiving the help that they need. If this expert panel is going to contribute to that, then that is a fantastic achievement of this piece of legislation. So I would like the Minister to make a contribution about whether other expertise was identified or sought, or whether they think that within the areas that I've mentioned, LGBTI issues will be talked about. Because whether we like it or not, the statistics are really clear from the youth survey that if you're an LGBTI young person in New Zealand, your rates of suicide attempt are 2 and 3 times higher. For our trans kids, I think that they struggle with not only their identity, but the fact they don't have people to talk to about what they're going through. And actually, we have an incredibly unresponsive health system. I know of young trans people who, if they are lucky enough to access hormones, will not be eligible to have the surgical reassignment surgery that they need for 32 years. So how's that going to impact on a young trans person who's diagnosed today and has to wait 32 years to receive gender reassignment surgery. Thank you.
Ian McKelvey.